welcome back to 7 Steps to Smile. It's been a while. I've been a bit busy, but I've also been putting this off, so that is no excuse. Today, I'm gonna talk about the importance of attention. I want to clarify what I mean by attention, but before I get into that, did you know that the average person checks their phone about 96 times a day, according to some website I found on Google? Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because people have stuff to do. I do a lot of work on my phone. People need to reply to messages, check emails, and yeah, a lot of people have work that they need to do on their phone. But if we think of attention as our spotlight, what grabs our attention, most of us are letting the spotlight just flicker on like a strobe light. And today we'll unpack what attention is, why it matters, and how to spend it wisely. This analogy of attention as a spotlight isn't my own, and it wasn't just on the spot that I made it up there. I'm actually reading from an episode plan, but the analogy itself comes from 19th century psychologist William James. It's this idea that attention selects one area of information and ignores the rest. This is what we think of as focusing, and it can be applied to external stimuli, like somebody speaking at a podium, or our own thoughts, like those ones that sometimes can make it hard to sleep at night. They're just cycling through our head. Our brains filter about 99% of sensory input, and the spotlight of attention decides what breaks through. So, why is it a spotlight? Why aren't we just able to pay attention to everything all the time? Why can't it be more like a floodlight? Studies have shown that while a lot of people think they can multitask, only around 1% of people actually can. What we're actually doing when we think we're multitasking is we're task switching, right? So you do something, and to be able to do something else, for a minute or for a while, you stop doing this one thing and you switch to this other thing. You think you're doing two things at once, but you're actually just switching between things. And it's not efficient because there's a delay in between your actions, between the tasks, between the time that you stop one and you start something else, and you end up having to reorientate yourself every time you go back to a task, figure out where you were, what has to happen next. So you lose speed, you lose efficiency, and maybe you get those two tasks done quicker, maybe, but they're not going to be done as well. And studies show this. So, yeah, we're not multitasking, we're task switching. But the reason that we can't multitask, most of us can't, I still don't believe that this 1% actually exists. I think it's a myth. But this is what research shows. The reason that we think we can multitask, or rather, the reason why we can't multitask, is because of the limited resource idea from Daniel Kahneman. I think I mentioned that I'm crawling through his book, still am. It's sitting on my bedside. Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman, he has this capacity theory of attention. It's this idea that attention is a finite mental resource, and there are tasks that demand different levels of attention. Like maybe you're doing math, or maybe you're learning something new, and that requires you to give more attention to the subject at hand. Maybe you're doing something that requires a lot of effort, a lot of cognitive load. Or maybe you're doing a repetitive task that you've done very often, and it doesn't require that much attention. When your demand exceeds the capacity, the amount of attention that you have to give at any point in time, we tend to not do those tasks very well. Attention is like your phone battery. You think you got all day, but as time goes on, suddenly it's 2 p.m. and you're at 12%. And now you're scrambling for a charger. So when we think about attention as a finite mental resource, when you think about attention like you would any finite mental resource or any finite resource, we tend to structure our decisions better. I know I have. And that brings on my next point. The most relatable finite resource for all of us is money. It's currency, commodity. And I think it's time we start thinking about our attention and our thoughts as a currency. From the early 1970s, when IBM first adopted email for use in their office, to now, IBM was the first company that adopted email in the office. Don't worry, this has a point. From then till now, the speed of communication has absolutely exploded. We can send and receive information in seconds. It's instant. And while that might make us more efficient or productive, it's also pretty stressful. We're social animals, humans, and letting other people down brings up a lot of stress. We don't want to be a burden on our community. And that's why there's an urge to respond to messages immediately. And now there's all types of social media apps and instant messages, and we get notifications every 10 minutes. And that's all thanks to a new market that has emerged where your attention is being bought, probably without you knowing it. This new market is it's come up because of this new attention economy. It's these tech companies that are competing for our eyeballs. And with the new model, attention is considered a valuable and scarce commodity. This has led to bigger focus on attention-grabbing content, and social media algorithms are now engineered to reward content with high engagement and retention. That's why you get all these influencers that are coming in with these hooks to grab your attention in the first 3 seconds, because then the algorithm rewards them. And when something has your attention, like these Reels or TikToks, this valuable limited resource of your attention, it becomes all that much easier to advertise things to you. Things like infinite scroll, autoplay, and these notifications are designed to hijack your focus. If these companies, these big tech companies, have recognized how valuable and how important your attention is, maybe we should start putting the same value on our attention and our thoughts. I don't want to sound like I'm against social media. I'm not. It's a wonderful way to connect and to create and to communicate with people, share our thoughts. I just think while it allows for those opportunities, it also allows us more opportunities to distract ourselves. I definitely still struggle with resisting that automatic urge to pick up my phone and scroll when I'm bored or tired or lonely or sometimes hungry. But I need to be more conscious of that, and I think a lot of people feel like they need to be a lot more conscious of that. Social media and online content shows you that you can focus, but that brings up a new question of, should you? And when should you not pay attention? We've spoken about attention as this valuable resource. We've spoken about how it can get you to focus, and I want to do an episode at some point on flow and getting into a flow state. Just maybe then it'll help me get into those more often. But because attention is such a scarce, valuable resource, there are definitely times when you shouldn't pay attention, or there are things that you shouldn't pay attention or as much attention to. Research shows that mind wandering fuels creativity. Now that makes sense. When you're alert, your brain is in stress mode. It's scanning, it's looking for threats in your environment. And that's not the state that empowers you to create, right? Unfocused moments create breakthroughs. For example, I'm sure you might have heard the story before of Archimedes' eureka moment in the bathtub, where he got into the bath, he's struggling with this idea of, I think it was a water screw in Egypt. He was trying to figure out something for irrigation, I don't know. But when he got into the bath and he saw the water rise, the idea of water displacement clicked for him. And he ran out naked into the streets shouting Eureka, or I got it. Those unfocused moments, those moments in the shower or in the bathroom where your mind is just not thinking about what stresses you out or the problems that stress you out that you're trying to find creative solutions to. The unfocused moments are more often when those breakthroughs happen. And the takeaway that I think is important from that is that boredom is not the enemy. We don't like being bored. I don't like being bored. It doesn't feel nice. It feels like I'm being unproductive sometimes. And we've sort of eliminated boredom from our society. It's so easy to whip out your phone and play a game or scroll, watch a video, even listen to a podcast sometimes. It might feel productive, but sometimes it's distracting you. And boredom is great. It sort of helps you get more comfortable with your own thoughts in one way, but it also allows you time to really digest everything that's going on. And in that way, it also fuels creativity. I mean, if you took all the notes in any great piece of music and you play them right after the other without a second between them, any great song would sound horrible. If you just think about all the notes played systematically, continuously, right after the other, there would be no song. It would just be a noise. It's the breaks, it's the rest, the silences between the notes that make good music. One thing that I need to work on more, and I have been getting better at this, is taking deliberate unfocused time. Just maybe taking walks or purposefully daydreaming. Maybe just waking up a little early in the morning to lay in bed and stare at the ceiling. And I think that would I know that would be quite good. Not just in a productive sense or of it being some type of edge for you or some type of creative edge either. But I think it would make us all a little bit more content and calm and happier. And that the importance of that can't be understated either, because if we're not happy, then what are we doing? Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is the danger of paying too much attention. So we've spoken about what attention is. We've spoken about how we can think of attention as this valuable commodity, and because it's this valuable commodity, when we shouldn't be paying too much attention. But what happens when we do pay too much attention, right? The danger of paying too much attention one of them is hyperfocus. It's when you get so zoned in on some subject or some thought or something, and it blinds us to this big picture that's going on around us. It's this tunnel vision, this inattentional blindness. I don't know how many of you would know. I definitely didn't know this until I started researching for this episode. But in 1999, there was this study done by two people, Simons and Chabris. I don't know if I'm saying their names correct. But the study was done where they took participants and they showed them a video. And in the video, they were told to pay attention to, I think there were balls. They were counting something that was happening on screen in the video. And while the video was playing, in the background, a man dressed in a gorilla costume walked across the screen. Now, only 50% of the participants, after the video was completed, only 50% of the participants said that they saw the gorilla. If you want, you can go to YouTube, and I'm sure the experiment or similar experiments are there. And you'll see, I did it myself. And because I knew what the experiment was, I knew to look out for it. But it's actually quite astonishing how focusing on one thing sort of creates this tunnel vision where you're blinded to everything else. The way I want us to think about this is to imagine a ball being thrown at you. Your focus is on the ball to catch it, right? Everything else blurs into the background as this ball gets closer and closer. And you don't have that much time, but you have to ask yourself whether that ball deserves that level of focused attention. Now, maybe it does. Maybe you're in university and it's coursework. Maybe you're working and it's work. Or maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you don't need to miss the sunset because of the Netflix autoplay. Sometimes hyper-focusing leads us to miss the things that are going around us and miss out on experiences that we would rather have, if we're being honest. Another danger of paying too much attention, and something that is sort of linked to hyperfocusing, is rumination. It's attention stuck on negative thoughts. I struggled a lot with this for a while, and it happened late at night when I was going to bed, and early in the morning when I was psyching myself to get out of bed. And it's stuck on these loops, these perseverating thoughts that go on in your head, and it becomes really nasty dialogue sometimes. And I think a lot of people struggle with this. I know a lot of people don't talk about it, but I have a feeling that a lot of people struggle with this. And sometimes when the spotlight of your attention is too stuck inwards, and when you combine that with a lack of self-compassion, and because of that lack of self-compassion, you find yourself being too critical and too self-critical, you hyper-focusing on these inward critical thoughts can put you in some really dark places. And that has a knock-on effect with everything, but the biggest issue there is you become unhappy. And the reason that I started this podcast is for me to archive for myself, but also so that other people can find their own way to climb the 7 steps to smile. So those are the two dangers of paying too much attention: hyperfocusing and rumination. So When do you decide whether you should pay attention, how much attention should you pay, and when maybe you should turn it off or relax? It's about finding this word that I don't like, finding balance. You need to audit your attention. You need to decide, does this, whatever it is, does this deserve my spotlight? And use an attention budget. Spend it like money. If you had to pay for every single thought, every single second that you spent on a thought, would you be more intentional with your attention? Also, single tasking. No more multitasking or the illusion of multitasking. Neuroscience shows that multitasking is just fast task switching. It's slower and it leads to more errors. Multitasking doesn't actually work. It just makes us feel busier because it manufactures a feeling of increased effort. It's harder to split our focus when we're doing these two things that we think we're doing at once. And so it's more effortful, but it's not necessarily more efficient. And in our society, we glorify being busy and feeling tired. It makes us feel valued. So that's typically why we tend towards multitasking. I want to talk about the flow state in a future episode. But to just get started, getting started on one task and being clear about what the requirements are for that task and the time that you have is an excellent way to just get lost in the task. Obviously, enjoyment is one of the things that's important as well. You need to enjoy what you're doing, but there also needs to be some level of difficulty. They call it the Goldilocks zone. Not too easy that it's boring, but not too hard that it's off-putting. Once you find that mix, get the right mix, you will find yourself in a flow state and just getting lost in what you're doing, and time will just go by. But we'll get into that in a future episode. Another thing that we need to pay attention to is training our attention muscle. Because we've eliminated boredom from our society, we have terrible attention spans. But we can do something about that. It's not the end of the world. Things like meditation and mindfulness, even breath counting, strengthens our attentional control. Research shows that 8 weeks of mindfulness training increases gray matter in our brain. Gray matter in the attention regulation area of our brain. Now, gray matter is the myelinated part of your brain that is responsible. It's linked to neuroplasticity and learning, and there's stronger, faster neurons in that area of our brain. So you can think of it as the brain's highway. So building in unfocused time will also help with training our attention muscle. Protecting spaces for ideas to surface. Don't take your phone into the bathroom with you. Ritualizing boredom. Taking walks without your phone. Journaling. Just spending some time daydreaming. Allow for the space for your own eureka moment. In closing, I just want to go through what we've gone through. Attention is your spotlight. Things can grab your attention, but you can still choose to shift that spotlight. It's not over once something grabs your attention. You can still move the spotlight. And you should, because the light costs money. It's a currency. Your attention is a valuable commodity, and you should pay attention to that. But not too much attention, not all the time, at least, because it's a valuable commodity. Some things need more attention than others. Sometimes you just need to be where your feet are. you don't just control your attention. Your attention controls who you become. This week, notice where your spotlight is drifting and ask, is this where I want to invest the most valuable thing that I own? Thank you, and I'll see you next week.